Okay, let me see. Do you have the recorder, Michelle? Good morning, class. Today we have your tests only. So I've got on your 180 multi number 1, proper names. You have Mike Cochran, Mr. Cochran, Miss Estep, Miss Hale, City Attorney Lillian, West 114th Street, City Garbage Department, Pershing Square, White, Park, and Granite. And so let me just turn it over a little bit more towards you. If you just tell me when you're in the camera. Sorry. That, okay. Okay, and so it starts in the middle with question by Ms. Hale. I am Ms. Hale.
The witness,
Mrs. Stepp.
Ms. Hale.
the witness,
Mrs. Stepp.
And so this is going to be 180 multi number 1 for 5 minutes. And it starts with Ms. Hale asking the witness questions, unless you have Ms. Estep talking to the witness or myself. 5 minutes starts with myself asking the witness questions. Can you please give us your full name, sir?
Mike Cochran.
Mr. Cochran, I want to tell you a little bit about this deposition and how it is going to work.
Counsel, I have already explained all that to him, and he understands what a deposition is all about.
I am doing this for the purposes of the record. Ms. Estep, I want to make sure that there are no questions later.
Okay, sorry, Miss Hale. Go ahead.
I assume you've discussed this with the city attorney concerning this deposition, what it is that is going to happen here.
Yes, ma'am, I have.
Well, briefly, Mr. Cochran, I'm going to ask you questions and we would like to have your answers. It will all be taken down by the reporter and later transcribed into a booklet. Now, before you answer any question, I think about it and answer the question as best you recall. If you don't understand a question or think it's ambiguous to you, just say so and we will rephrase it for you. I might caution you, as your attorney would, don't volunteer anything, just answer the question specifically, yes or no, or whatever the question may call for, but don't volunteer any information. Now, your answers are all being taken down under oath, so think about what you say before you answer. If you don't know the answer, just say, I don't know, or I don't remember, or whatever the case may be.
Does that clarify what I had previously told you?
Yes, ma'am, it certainly has.
What is your age, please?
43.
You said 43?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you married?
Yes, I am.
What is your wife's name?
Lillian.
Where do you live?
I live at 3731 West 114th Street.
Whom are you employed by?
The city. I work for the city.
What department are you with?
I work for the garbage department.
How long have you been with the department?
It has been about 16 years.
Do you have a valid operator's license?
Yes, I have.
Has it ever been revoked or restricted in any way?
No, it has not.
Now, directing your attention to June 25, 1967, do you recall an accident involving a pedestrian and a young boy?
Yes.
It was near Pershing Square.
Yes, I do.
Who was your employer at that time?
The city. I was a truck driver operator for the city.
How long had you been operating a truck for the city prior to the accident?
I guess for around 9 years.
What type of truck was it that you drove?
A white truck. That's the make, white.
This was a trash truck, a garbage truck, right?
Yes.
Is the driver on the right or the left side of the truck?
Beg your pardon?
Where does the driver sit, is what I am asking you.
On the right-hand side.
Were you wearing glasses on the day of the accident?
No.
Were you suffering from any illness on that date?
No, I was not.
Were you under a doctor's treatment at that time?
No, I was not.
Did you have any medication or any intoxicating beverages within 24 hours before the time of the accident?
No.
Now, have you had any accidents prior to that day?
Yes.
Well, wait a minute. I'm going to object as irrelevant and immaterial unless you're going into his physical condition due to some sort of accident.
Strike the question, please. Have you had any accidents subsequent to that date?
Again, I'm going to object as irrelevant and immaterial.
Are you instructing him not to answer?
I am instructing him not to answer. I will say this, though, for the record. Miss Hale has been extremely kind in letting his deposition go over a couple of times because of the fact he was injured and in the hospital. And so I don't want you to think that
I understand.
the delay was not legitimate in this respect. I think he was in the hospital for 90 days.
One of the reasons I was asking the question was to determine the cause of the hospitalization. Now, just prior to the accident, Mr. Cochran, what street were you on when you approached the intersection of Park and Pershing Square?
I was on Granite.
Is there a signal at Pershing and Granite?
Yes.
Now, when you approach that intersection where the signals are, where did you approach from? Do you understand the question?
No, I don't.
You recall the intersection of Pershing and Granite?
Yes.
From what street did you come to that intersection on?
Could I help maybe?
Shirley.
What street were you on just before the accident happened?
Before it happened,
Yes, at the time it happened, what street were you traveling on?
I can't recall which street it was. I came off the freeway.
No, she's talking about at the time the accident happened. What cross streets are involved there?
Granite.
You approached the intersection on Granite?
Yes, I did.
In other words, were you going straight north?
Yes, I was.
Before the accident,
Yes, ma'am. I was going north.
were you ever on Pershing that day?
No, I was not.
Do you recall whether or not there were signals at Granite and Pershing on the date in question?
I don't recall. There may have been.
Okay, and so we have 180 multi. Number 2, you have Henry Jones, Detective Figueroa, Mr. Jones, Abe Lucas, Mr. Lucas, D-Day, City of El Paso, California, God Almighty, Abe, God, Mr. Garcia, and Tony. And so it starts in the middle with question by Mr. Roberts. One of them's the court, yeah.
I know. I just. Oh, yeah.
Veronica's the court. And so it starts in the middle with
yours, Mr.
question by
Roberts?
Mr. Roberts. Always Mr. Roberts is witness unless you have the court, all of the banks speaking to the witness, answer bank. Okay, so I am Mr. Roberts.
The witness?
The court.
Mr. Roberts,
The witness?
The court.
and this is going to be 180 multi. Number 2 starts with question by Mr. Roberts for 5 minutes. I don't think we have a mic.
Oh, I thought that was a mic. I'm sorry.
Now, as I understand it, the next proceeding is like a suppression hearing.
Yes, sir.
Did Mr. Henry Jones ever write down his version of the facts
Not to my knowledge.
other than you gave him?
None that I saw.
Okay,
Are you talking prior to the hearing? At the hearing?
prior to the hearing.
No. Prior, I never saw anything written down.
Okay, and during the hearing, let me just ask you one specific question. Was Detective Figueroa there?
He was outside.
He was outside. Was he called by Mr. Jones?
No.
He was not,
No.
but he was present.
Yes.
Now, did Mr. Jones appear familiar or unfamiliar with the facts of the case at that hearing?
He asked questions of Detective Sanchez. When something was said, I would kind of poke him, write him a note and say, you know, this is either not the case or it needs to be expanded upon. And it got to the point where after he'd asked a certain number of questions, he actually turned to me and says, is there anything else you want me to ask? I was uncomfortable at that point, but not, I mean, you know, I believe in the system and the system works. And he was my lawyer at the time, and still with the understanding that Abe Lucas was overseeing this.
Okay, when is the next time you saw either Mr. Lucas or Mr. Jones after the suppression hearing?
D-Day, Friday. We received a call to report to the office at 3 o'clock. You have to be here. It's an important meeting. It's vital. You must be here. We showed up at 3 o'clock and Mr. Jones was there. Supposedly, Mr. Lucas was at the courthouse and
Yeah, and?
Henry walked out and he said, guys, he said, you're in for it now. He said, you're just in deep trouble. They're going to go for 40 years on Monday. He said, you're the #1 trial for the #1 jury in the city of El Paso. And he said, they're going for 40. He said, you're in trouble. To which all of us said, hang on, whoa, hang on. What happened to don't worry about it? Things are fine. there's no evidence. He said, well, he said, there have been some drug busts in California and the city is going to make an example of somebody and you're it. And we said, hold on, wait a minute. When is his trial? Monday morning at 10 o'clock. This is 3:30 Friday afternoon and we're scheduled at 10 o'clock Monday morning for jury selection. I mean, that was our notice. And that's the next time I saw Mr. Jones.
Okay, so what happened next?
We said, God Almighty, 40 years. I mean, 40. What are you looking at? And we went through the, it's 40 years at the Texas Department of Corrections. We said, well, isn't there something that can be done? He said, well, I'm paraphrasing this. Abe's at the courthouse. Maybe if we offered a package, they'd go with it. I said, package? What?
Abe Lucas said this?
No, it was Mr. Jones. Abe's at the courthouse.
Okay.
On that Friday, we never talked to Mr. Lucas. It was always an illusion on the phone. Well, Abe says, but we never heard directly from Mr. Lucas. There was always a phone call. Hang on a minute, I'm going to go call him. He's at the courthouse. He said, we'll get probation. He said, however, if you go to trial and the jury goes for 40, but they give you 10 years and 1 day, and this part I remember. He said, the 1 day is important, he said, because if you get the 1 day, you are not eligible, and he said, you're going to go down.
Not eligible for what?
For probation. So we thought about it. We said, well, my God. I mean, when do you need to know? And he said, well, we need to know now. Abe's with the judge, and he'll get a hold of Mr. Garcia, but we need to know within the next 30 minutes. So we had no preparation. A bomb dropped on us, threats of 40 years, and then basically an offer back that said, we can get you 10 and you're eligible for probation. And he said, we feel that that's what's going to happen to you because you have no prior convictions. So within 30 minutes, we're looking at each other going, what the hell are we going to do? And Ortega was the first one. Always the first one. That sounds good to me. That sounds good. I'm going for it. But it was presented in a fashion where it was packaged. What one does, all do. And this occurred all through this thing. For shock, well, Tony, they can't just give you shock because if they give you shock, they've got.
Okay, and we'll get ready for your 160s. The video went off. Did you see it? And
Is that
then
what
it came back on. Yeah, it went off.
I just
So we might just have to do the audio. It says it's recording now, but I don't know if it's going to go off for them.
So what are you doing, Mr. Kaplan? Can you take those out, please?
all of them are just.
The two on each